Ladies and gentlemen, let's cut to it. If you want to lead, grow, or build anything that lasts, you have to learn how to speak like the CEO. I don't care what your title is. I don't care if you're a founder, a solopreneur, a team lead, or just getting started. How you communicate will set the tone for every result you're going to get. And the truth is, most people are talking like employees when they want to be seen like leaders. That stops today. Speaking like the CEO is not about sounding fancy. It's not about talking more or using jargon. It's about clarity, purpose, intentionality. It's about saying the one sentence that aligns your team, your clients, and your vision when everyone else is rambling in circles. CEO don't speak to fill space, they speak to move people. You want to sound like a leader, then stop hiding behind vague words. Say what you mean, be direct, be kind, but be decisive. You cannot expect to lead anyone if you're constantly second, guessing your words. If you want people to follow you, to trust you, to believe in your ideas, you have to be clear. Clarity builds confidence, and confident people create momentum. That's how you start sounding like the CEO. Here's the thing, most of us weren't taught how to communicate this way. We were taught to be polite, to not make waves, to soften our message. And while empathy is non-negotiable, you cannot sacrifice clarity for comfort. A CEO communicates vision in a way that leaves no doubt about where the company is headed. They say, this is the goal, this is the standard, here's what winning looks like. And when people hear that kind of certainty, they rise to the occasion. Speaking like the CEO also means learning how to lead conversations, not just participate in them. You don't always have to speak first, but when you do speak, you better believe people are listening. That means eliminating filler words. That means pausing before you respond. That means learning how to hold the room with energy, posture, and tone, because your presence says more than your words ever will. And let's talk about feedback. If you want to build a forming team or business, you have to be a feedback machine. CEO don't avoid feedback. They invite it. They give it with intention. They receive it with humility. And they use it as fuel. Stop being afraid of being direct. You are not being mean when you tell someone how they can improve. You are showing them that you care. You're giving them a chance to grow. That's leadership. That's what it looks like to speak with purpose. There's also the emotional tone of your voice, your energy. You can say all the right words, but if your tone is off, if you're checked out, people feel that. Leadership is felt. Speaking like a CEO means bringing energy into the room, even when you're tired. It means speaking with alignment between your words, your values, and your actions. That congruence is magnetic. People follow leaders who sound like they mean it. Now here's the good news. You can practice this. You don't have to be born with some magical charisma. This is a skill. It's trainable. Start recording yourself. Watch how you speak in meetings. Pay attention to how often you say I think or maybe. Start cutting the fluff. Tighten up your language. Practice holding eye contact. Raise your voice, not in volume but in ownership. You don't need a title to speak like the CEO. You need responsibility. You need vision. You need to care enough to communicate like someone who owns the outcome. Because at the end of the day, leadership is not about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the most aligned, the most intentional, the most willing to say what needs to be said, even when it's uncomfortable. That's what makes people follow you. That's what builds trust. That's what moves companies forward. So my question to you is this. Are you speaking like someone who wants to be liked, or someone who's here to lead? Make the decision. Step into the voice. Speak like the CEO. Communication is a leadership tool, not just a skill. It's one of the most overlooked competitive advantages in business and leadership. The people who lead at the highest level aren't necessarily the ones with the deepest expertise or the most impressive resumes. They are the ones who know how to communicate their vision, enroll others in that vision, and move people into action. CEO understand this deeply. They don't use communication just to inform. They use it to influence, align, and execute. When they speak, they are not simply delivering information. They are creating direction, clarity, and belief. Every CEO has access to the same resources: time, data, people, and challenges. What sets the great ones apart is how they communicate in the midst of those resources. They know that their words create movement. In a team meeting, they don't just report numbers, they paint a picture of what those numbers mean for the team's future. In a crisis, they don't just react, they articulate confidence, calm, and a path forward. In a vision talk, they don't just share goals, they speak with a level of clarity and energy that makes people feel inspired and focused. This is not accidental, it's intentional, it's strategic. Most people think communication is just about what you say. But it's also how you say it, when you say it, and what you leave unsaid. CEO use their words to set expectations, not just relay facts. They use language to build culture. They create phrases, standards, and values that get repeated by their teams. This is how we win. Speed over perfection. We don't do average. These aren't just quotes. They're cultural anchors, and they are formed and reinforced by the leader's communication. When you speak like the CEO, you start shaping not just what people do but how they think . What's even more powerful is the consistency with which CEO communicate. They don't leave their messaging to chance. They know their audience. They know what questions are lingering. They anticipate resistance, confusion, and fear, and they speak to it before it even surfaces. Great CEO craft a narrative that is both truthful and hopeful. They acknowledge challenges without feeding panic. They articulate solutions without promising perfection. They speak in a way that makes people feel grounded and motivated. That's a fine line to walk, but it's what leadership communication demands. Clarity is the number one trait of CEO-level communication. When a CEO gives direction, there is no ambiguity. People walk away knowing exactly what's expected, why it matters, and how success will be measured. This kind of clarity saves time, prevents unnecessary conflict, and ensures that the team is aligned. Vague leaders create vague results, but when you speak with precision, your team executes with confidence. The tone of your communication matters just as much as the content. CEO are emotionally intelligent in how they deliver messages. They know when to challenge, when to celebrate, and when to pause. They don't default to one gear, they read the room. They adjust, and most importantly, they take full ownership of the message they deliver. If something isn't clear, they don't blame the team for not getting it. They clarify, they refine, they make sure the message lands. Because they understand that they are responsible for what's heard, not just what's said. In performance conversations, CEO don't avoid hard truths. They use communication as a tool for growth, not just correction. They give direct, actionable feedback. They separate fact from feeling, and they communicate high standards with compassion. This is not about being harsh. It's about being honest and being clear. When people know where they stand, they can improve. When communication is soft, vague, or passive, people stay confused, and nothing changes. CEO know that leadership requires truth in service of growth, and they speak from that place consistently. Even in one-on-one interactions, communication is a lever. CEO don't have casual, throwaway conversations. Every interaction is an opportunity to reinforce culture, drive clarity, and build trust. Whether it's a 30-second hallway chat or a quarterly review, they show up with intention. They listen fully, they speak thoughtfully, they communicate not just to be heard, but to be understood. Another overlooked aspect of CEO-level communication is repetition. Leaders are repeaters. Just because you've said something once doesn't mean it's been understood, internalized, or implemented. CEO know they have to say the same message many times in many ways through many channels. Vision, strategy, values, priorities, these need to be communicated constantly. At team meetings, in one-on-ones, in emails, in performance reviews. Repetition is not redundancy, it's reinforcement, it builds alignment. It creates focus, it drives results. Finally, CEO understand that their communication creates culture. The way they talk becomes the way their people talk. If a CEO speaks with urgency, the team works with urgency. If a CEO speaks with ownership, the team adopts that mindset. If a CEO is vague, defensive, or passive, that behavior will trickle down. Words matter, tone matters, repetition matters, and most of all, intention matters. To speak like the CEO is to take full responsibility for the impact of your words. It's to use communication not just to transfer information, but to create alignment, momentum, and results. You don't have to wait for the title. You don't need permission. Start speaking like the leader you are becoming. Speak clearly, speak consistently, speak with purpose, because communication isn't just a skill, it's the tool that builds your legacy. Confidence is built through clarity, not volume. The people who truly lead, who walk into a room and instantly shift the energy, are not always the loudest or the most charismatic. They are the clearest. They know exactly what they believe, where they're headed, and what needs to happen next. That kind of clarity creates an undeniable presence. It's what makes people stop and listen, because when someone speaks with clarity, they project certainty. And certainty is what breeds trust. So many people misunderstand confidence. They think it's about being bold, outspoken, dominant. They think it's about talking more, taking up more space, or making their voice the most heard. But the truth is, people don't follow the loudest voice in the room. They follow the voice that knows where it's going. You can speak quietly and still command the room. You can pause and still have power. Because what gives your voice authority isn't how much space it fills, it's how clear it is. Clarity in communication starts with internal clarity. If you're unclear in your own head, it will show up in your words. You'll ramble, you'll hedge, you'll over-explain. You'll fill silence with fluff because deep down, you're not entirely sure what you're saying. That's not a judgment. It's just human nature. The fastest way to build external confidence is to slow down and get honest with yourself. What do you really believe? What outcome do you want? What are you willing to stand behind? The people who speak like CEO don't try to impress. They try to express, and they do it with precision. They strip away the unnecessary. They don't bury their message in a wall of disclaimers. They don't apologize for their ideas. They speak in straight lines. They say, here's the goal, here's the problem, here's my proposal. That clarity sends a powerful signal to everyone around them. Asterisk, this person knows what they're doing. Asterisk, and when people feel that clarity, they trust, they follow, they act. One of the greatest misconceptions is that if you speak softly or don't dominate a conversation, you aren't confident. That couldn't be further from the truth. Confidence doesn't always look like charisma. Sometimes the most confident person in the room is the one who listens the most, then speaks with intentional, powerful words. They don't need to prove anything. They don't need to overpower anyone. They lead through clarity, not noise. Clarity also allows you to handle pushback with ease. When you're clear on your message, you don't get rattled by disagreement. You don't take questions as a threat. You're not defensive. Why? Because you know what you believe and why you believe it. When you don't have clarity, you feel like you have to defend every word. But when you have clarity, you can actually welcome questions because they give you an opportunity to reinforce your message. That's the difference between performative confidence and authentic leadership. Another reason clarity builds confidence is because it reduces decision fatigue, for you and for others. People want to follow leaders who make things easier, not harder. If you're always speaking in circles, if your direction is always shifting, if your words are confusing, people lose trust, not because you're bad, but because they don't know what to expect. Clarity brings order. It creates structure, and structure breeds security. That security turns into momentum. That momentum builds confidence not just in you, but in your team, your brand, your mission. Speaking with clarity also means you don't have to overcompensate. You don't need to add fluff or overtalk your point to be heard. You can say less and mean more. That's a skill that separates amateur communicators from those operating at a CEO level. The best leaders know that clarity doesn't come from using more words. It comes from choosing the right words. When you speak clearly, people don't just understand you. They remember you. There's also a deep inner freedom that comes from clarity. When you know exactly what you believe, what you want, and what you're about, you stop seeking constant external validation. You're no longer trying to be everything to everyone. You don't fear being misunderstood because your message is simple and strong. That kind of confidence is unshakable because it doesn't depend on applause. It's rooted in alignment. It's built on clarity. In conversations, that means you get to the point. In meetings, that means you set the tone. In presentations, that means your message sticks. You don't need to raise your voice. You just need to be clear. You don't need to dominate the conversation. You just need to guide it. That is the power of clarity. It lets you lead without force, speak without shouting, and move people without manipulation. So if you want to sound more confident, don't try to be louder, don't try to be more forceful, try to be more asterisk, clear asterisk. Sit down with your thoughts, write out your beliefs, outline your message, ask yourself, what's the one thing I want people to know? Then build everything around that. Confidence will follow, because when you speak with clarity, you don't just sound like a leader. You asterisk become asterisk one. You don't have to know everything, but you must own the room. This is one of the most important mindset shifts you can make if you want to lead at the highest level. Too often, people believe that in order to have a voice, to make decisions, to lead a team, or drive a conversation, they have to be the expert. They think they need all the answers, the perfect data, or every detail figured out before they can speak up or take control. But the truth is, leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about having presence, conviction, and the ability to guide people forward even when the path isn't perfectly clear. Owning the room doesn't mean being the smartest person in it. It means being the most grounded, the most focused, the most energetically aligned. It means showing up with certainty about your purpose, your role, and the outcome you're driving toward, even if you don't have every single detail ironed out. When you walk into a meeting, a boardroom, a conversation, or even a stage, people aren't looking for someone who knows everything. They're looking for someone who can create direction, someone who can hold space for clarity. Someone who can say, here's where we are, here's where we're going, and I'm going to lead us through it. That kind of leadership presence isn't reserved for CEO or executives. It's available to anyone who's willing to claim it. And it begins with how you carry yourself. When you own the room, you don't shrink back, you don't over-apologize, you don't fill the silence with uncertainty, you stand in your value, you speak with purpose. You act like someone who belongs there, not someone who's hoping to be accepted, because the energy you bring into a room influences how others perceive you far more than the words you say. Confidence is not perfection. It's not about having a flawless plan or a complete knowledge of everything on the table. It's about showing up and saying, I may not know everything, but I trust my judgment. I trust my team. I trust that we can find the solution. That mindset is powerful. It gives you the freedom to lead with humility while still commanding respect, because let's be honest, no one knows everything. Even the most seasoned CEO rely on their people, their advisors, their data. What separates leaders from followers is the willingness to take ownership, even in uncertainty. You can't fake owning the room. People can feel the difference between someone who's performing confidence and someone who's deeply anchored. Owning the room doesn't mean dominating it. It doesn't mean speaking the most or controlling every decision. It means showing up as the person who creates clarity. You walk in and people feel a shift. Not because you're loud, but because you're grounded. You don't let chaos take over the space. You direct the energy, the focus, the pace. There will be times when people question your authority, challenge your point, or even try to take the floor from you. If your default response is to shrink or defend, you've already given up your position. But if you've done the inner work, if you've prepared, if you've clarified your intention, then you can stay present. You don't get rattled. You don't have to prove yourself. You hold your space with calm. You listen fully. You speak with precision. That's what owning the room looks like. It's leadership through energy, not just authority. Even when you're asked something you don't know, you don't panic. You don't cover it up. You say, that's a great question. I'll follow up with the answer. That kind of transparency doesn't diminish your leadership. It strengthens it. People trust leaders who can admit what they don't know but still drive results. Owning the room is not about ego, it's about responsibility. You take responsibility for the direction of the conversation, the mood of the team, the clarity of the message. This mindset also gives you permission to lead your way. You don't have to mimic someone else's communication style. You don't have to be loud if you're naturally calm. You don't have to be fast if your strength is in being thoughtful. You own the room when you own who you are. People respect authenticity more than perfection. So stop trying to sound like someone else. Speak like you, lead like you, but do it with presence, purpose, and power. When you walk into a room, whether it's a pitch meeting, a team update, or a tough conversation, ask yourself, what does this room need right now? Does it need focus, confidence, direction, energy? You bring that, you anchor that, that's how you lead. You don't wait to be handed control. You take it by showing up with clarity and intention. You don't need to be the expert. You need to be the one who leads the experts forward. Over time, people begin to associate your voice, your posture, your energy with leadership. They know when you speak, it matters, not because you talk the most, but because you bring something different. You bring calm in chaos. You bring momentum when there's stagnation. You bring belief when there's doubt. That's the power of owning the room. So no, you don't have to know everything, but you do have to take up space like you belong there. You do have to lead like the outcome depends on you, because often it does. Speak clearly, stand tall, move the room with your presence. That's how you speak like a CEO. That's how you lead when others hesitate. That's how you build real influence, from the inside out. The ability to handle tough conversations with strength and grace is one of the most underrated CEO-level skills. It's not about being aggressive or avoiding conflict. It's about being the kind of leader who can walk directly into uncomfortable conversations, speak the truth clearly, and still preserve the dignity and respect of everyone involved. That's the mark of emotional intelligence. That's the sign of someone who's leading, not just managing, and it's absolutely essential if you want to speak and lead like a CEO. Most people avoid tough conversations. They delay them, sugarcoat them, or water them down. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It's human nature to want to be liked, to avoid conflict, to maintain harmony. But avoiding hard conversations doesn't create harmony. It creates confusion. It creates resentment, lack of accountability, and underperformance. The leaders who grow businesses, who build high-performance cultures, who inspire trust, are the ones who are willing to get in the room and have the conversation everyone else is afraid of. Speaking like a CEO means you don't flinch when things get uncomfortable. You don't raise your voice, you don't attack, but you also don't shy away from the truth. You get clear on the facts, you center yourself in your values, and you deliver the message directly, respectfully, and with calm authority. That combination, truth plus empathy, directness plus grace, is what separates strong leaders from weak ones. It's easy to talk about performance and goals when things are going well. It's harder to address someone who's under-delivering, misaligned, or impacting the team negatively. But that's when your leadership voice matters most. Having strength in hard conversations means being rooted in facts, not emotions. It means you're not coming from a place of frustration, judgment, or personal attacks. You're grounded in clarity, what happened, what was expected, what the impact was, and what needs to change, and then you say it clearly, calmly, without passive language, without vague suggestions. You say, this behavior is not acceptable, or we agreed to this deadline and it wasn't met. Help me understand what happened, or the standard here is excellence and this work isn't meeting it. Those statements are not cruel. Their leadership, because accountability is not harsh, it's healthy. Grace in hard conversations is about staying human. It's remembering that the person you're speaking to is doing their best, even if they've missed the mark. It's giving people space to explain, to improve, to grow, without letting them off the hook. Grace doesn't mean you soften the message. It means you deliver it in a way that honors the other person's humanity. You speak with warmth, but you don't compromise the standard. That balance is where trust is built. People respect leaders who are honest with them, especially when it's hard. If you're clear, kind, and fair, even in hard moments, your team will trust you more, not less. Tough conversations don't just happen in formal performance reviews or high-stakes meetings. They show up in day-to-day interactions. It's the moment you notice a peer overstepping a boundary. It's when a team member makes an excuse instead of taking ownership. It's when tension is brewing between departments. You can choose to ignore it, or you can step in and lead. The CEO mindset is to step in, not with judgment, but with clarity and intention. You might say, I noticed some friction between you and the marketing team. What's going on? Or it sounds like there's some confusion about roles. Let's clear that up now. These moments, handled well, build credibility. They create a culture of openness and accountability. The key is not to script every word, but to prepare your energy. Before you enter a hard conversation, ground yourself. Ask, what's my intention? What's the outcome I want? How can I speak the truth in a way that empowers this person, not shames them? You walk in aligned. Calm, unshakable, you listen, you stay present, and you don't get pulled into emotional spirals. That's what it means to lead with strength and grace. Some leaders think avoiding tough conversations is being nice, but niceness without truth isn't kindness, it's avoidance. And avoidance breeds chaos. Teams don't thrive when things are swept under the rug. They thrive when the air is clear, when expectations are known, and when people trust that issues will be addressed directly and fairly. That's your job as a leader, to create that clarity, to speak that truth, to be the one who steps in when others hold back. And here's the truth: the more you practice having hard conversations, the easier they become. Not because they stop being uncomfortable, but because you build the muscle. You stop personalizing everything. You start recognizing that directness is actually one of the most respectful things you can offer someone. You start to trust yourself more, to say what needs to be said, to hold a standard, to navigate the tension without collapsing or attacking. That's real leadership. That's what builds high-performance teams. So if you want to speak like a CEO, stop avoiding the hard stuff. Learn to say the uncomfortable thing in the kindest possible way. Learn to give feedback in a way that elevates, not diminishes. Learn to walk into tension with clarity and walk out with alignment. It's not easy, but it's necessary, because leadership isn't about keeping everyone comfortable. It's about helping everyone grow, and growth lives on the other side of hard conversations. When you speak, your words should move people to action. That is the difference between talking and leading. CEO don't speak to fill space. They speak to generate momentum, whether it's a one meeting, a team call, a company-wide address, or a pitch to investors. Their words are chosen with intention. They're not performing, they're directing. Their voice isn't just informative, it's catalytic. It gets people to lean in, buy in, and move forward. Too often, people talk without thinking about what they want the outcome to be. They share updates, opinions, and information, but there's no direction, no impact, no spark. Speaking like a CEO means every time you open your mouth, you're clear on the purpose. Are you trying to align the team? Shift a mindset, close a deal, establish a standard. Whatever it is, your words should move people toward it. Clarity of outcome fuels clarity of message. This doesn't mean you need to be overly rehearsed or robotic. In fact, some of the most powerful moments in leadership communication come from real-time authenticity. But even spontaneous communication should be anchored in purpose. If you're leading a team meeting, don't just go through the motions. Ask yourself, what do I want them to walk away with? What do I want them to feel? What action do I want them to take? Once you have that clarity, you shape your message around it. You strip away the fluff. You speak in direct, actionable terms. You own your impact. There's a powerful shift that happens when you begin to think of your words as tools of leadership. They're not just expressions, they're instruments. They can calm chaos, they can drive focus, they can shift mindsets, they can unlock momentum, but only if they're used with intention. That's the CEO mindset. You're not speaking to be impressive, you're speaking to create movement. To do that well, you need to know your audience. You need to understand what matters to them, what pressures they're under, what they need in order to move forward. Great leaders don't speak in a vacuum. They tailor their message to the people in front of them. If your team is stuck in fear or confusion, your words should create clarity and confidence. If your organization is pushing for growth, your words should ignite urgency and belief. If you're aligning cross-functional partners, your words should create cohesion and shared purpose. You're not just talking, you're building a bridge from where people are to where they need to go. Tone matters as much as content. The way you say something can either open a door or shut it. You can deliver the same message in a way that inspires action or in a way that creates defensiveness. CEO understand this. They're intentional with their tone. They don't speak from anxiety or reactivity. They speak from centered clarity. Their energy is calm, direct, decisive. That's what moves people, not just the words themselves, but the emotional space those words are coming from. Pacing and pausing are also tools. You don't need to rush through your points to sound smart. In fact, some of the most powerful leaders use silence strategically. They pause to let their message land. They slow down when something matters. They give space for others to absorb what's been said. When you control the tempo of your speech, you control the energy in the room. And when you control the energy, you guide the action. Storytelling is another way great leaders move people. They don't just drop facts, they bring meaning. They illustrate ideas with real moments, personal experiences, team wins, and powerful visuals. Stories stick. They humanize you. They make abstract concepts tangible. A well-placed story can rally a team, convince a skeptic, or spark a decision faster than a dozen data points. It doesn't have to be long or dramatic. It just needs to be real, relevant, and purposeful. But here's the key. All of this only works if you mean what you say. You can't fake conviction. People can tell when your message is aligned with your values and when it's not. If you want your words to move people, you have to believe them. You have to be in alignment. That alignment gives your voice weight. It gives your message credibility. People don't just follow what you say. They follow how much you believe what you say. The most effective CEOs speak less often, but when they do, it counts. They don't waste words, they don't ramble, they don't dilute their message, they speak with intention, they communicate with focus, and they always tie their words to action. Even in everyday conversations, they're leading. They're shaping outcomes, they're moving the room, so if you want to speak like a CEO, ask yourself before every conversation, what is the outcome I'm driving? What is the energy I'm bringing? What is the shift I want to create? Speak from that place. Don't just talk to fill the air, talk to change it. Let your words be clear, grounded, and action-oriented. Speak like someone who knows the next step and is willing to lead people there. Because when your words move people, you're not just speaking, you're leading.